Welcome in, everybody. It's the Line Movers Network College Football Podcast, and I am with my guys, Ian Robbins and the Tutor, for another big week of college football. How are we doing, guys?
Great. A couple weeks left in the regular season. A lot still left to be determined. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, it's my birthday today, and I'm sick.
Happy birthday!
I think brandy mixes well when you're sick and your birthday.
Happy birthday, Tutor. Thanks for coming on again.
Happy birthday to our guy.
Trey, we'll be back soon, hopefully, and we get a true roundtable going on. Some great college football minds around.
Yes, Trey, feel better, buddy. Get well soon. We are going to do a different type of show this evening, and on this podcast, some of our very loyal listeners all around the country have emailed in the Tutor with questions on college football and betting, and we're going to have a little mailbag discussion here and see what we can come up with. But we want to thank all the guys and girls for sending in their questions. It was great questions, so we're going to get to as many as we can, and let's start it off. You guys ready?
Let's fire away.
Here we go. All right, DJ Werner, who's also, his birthday is today. So happy birthday to DJ as well as our Tutor. Assuming they both take care of business, Ohio State and your Wolverines, Tutor, has to be the biggest matchup they've had in years. Biased aside, Tutor, and to Ian, how do you see the game playing out?
As far as the game goes, I think these are two of the best teams in the country. They wouldn't be able to slip up against Georgia, though. I think Georgia's a little bit a notch above both of them. They'd have to play their best game. But for each other, the same deal. They're going to have to play their best game. Ohio State does have the home field factor, but they cannot stop the run. And they couldn't stop the run last year. And what did Michigan like to do? They like to run the ball. But there's a new twist this year. And it's a twist we haven't had in a lot of years. We have a quarterback that can run now too. So, and when's the last time Ohio State or Ryan Day has had to deal with Michigan football with a running quarterback who really they haven't unleashed yet, really, and they haven't had to, right? Could Corum just go through the hole and then he gets it all for himself? I'm fairly confident this year about Michigan against Ohio State this year, even on the road. I think we can do it. I'm pumped up. I'm ready.
Ian?
Yeah, a couple weeks out, of course. We'll talk a lot about this game next week. Just off the bat, home field advantage Ohio State. We know that preseason rankings, Ohio State had the talent coming in, but Ohio State does have a lot more injuries. Michigan comes in a little bit healthier with their best players. Ohio State's coming looking at I don't know, we're 2 weeks away. So as of today, as of right now, before heading into both of them being 30-plus point favorites, you're looking at Ohio State struggling with injury at running back. Their top receiver, potential first-round pick, Jackson Smith-Njigba, has been out. Of course, they have depth there. For sure, they've shown a little bit of weariness and bad weather Ohio State has, so that's a little bit of concern. Concern on the Michigan side is, they've been probably overachieving, certainly overachieving based on preseason expectation. Losing 3 first-round picks to the NFL, not the ideal situation when you're going up against offense with that much talent, but they've been controlling the games, controlling the ball, and really turning it on when they've had to. That is the concern, though. First halves have been slow starts. Second halves, they've been turning it on. Ohio State has been able to get up to some leads in the first half. So it's kind of been like, how do they come out with the scripted plays in the first quarter? That's what I'm going to be looking for, the matchup there. Big game. Definitely, depending what happens this week, maybe an elimination game. Talk about that next week. But the spread is not going to change. Now, I did hear this on another show, and I thought that this was a different angle to take. If you're looking to bet this game, you want to look at maybe not even betting the game itself, the money lines. Look at to make the playoff lines, because this is basically a playing game. I personally think the winner of this game can lose next week, the following week to Purdue, and still make the playoffs, personally. But if you look, if you like Ohio State to win this game, you could bet Michigan no to make the playoffs at a much smaller number, or Ohio State to make the playoffs in a much smaller number. So maybe look at that angle if you're trying to bet the game today. Matchup wise, look for the health of these teams going into next week. I think they're both going to play conservative because they know the stakes at hand, but should be very even, a lot closer than I thought it would be 3 weeks ago.
It's a great way to look at it, Ian. I like that. Great suggestion there. If you're looking to play it now, much better prices on that. Great take. Daniel Goronsky also asking in on the same topic, Michigan, Ohio State. Will either move up their rivalry game from the last game of the year to possibly allow both teams to make the playoffs? And I think his point here is if they played in mid-September, the team that takes the loss has, 8-9 more weeks to roll through the Big Ten and get themselves back in the good graces of the committee's eyes. Great question, Daniel. What do you guys think?
I'll let you go. This is so close to your heart here.
Yeah, I'd love the idea of having them start the season. I've said that for a while. My dad hates it because this is what it is. My dad's been a much longer fan than I have. This is what they do. They play at the end of the season. This is the Big Ten championship on the line. But having said that, with the format moving to 12 team, it doesn't matter now. Go ahead and play the last game. If it wasn't moving to the 12th game and USC was coming and UCLA is coming, I think I would probably be more vocal about it, or even suggest separating divisions and not even playing like every other year, or something like that, and then hope they meet in the championship game. But if we're going to 12 game, if we're going to 12-man, 12-team playoff, let's keep it at the end, because what the committee loves is that they remember what happened just now. So if they play the last game in the season and at the sweet game, awesome game, both teams are at that time 10-2 or 11-1, and at the great game, they're both going to get in, win or lose. So I kind of like now, if we're going to expand the conference and we're going to expand the playoff, let's keep it the last game of the season and just hope that both teams are still good, because how in a 12-team conference, I don't see how at least 3 Big Ten teams don't get in. So now you're talking about Michigan, Ohio State, and then someone from the other side.
Yeah, I think that's a good point with the playoffs expanding. It's not
Great point.
pressing. A couple of years ago, when they did split to divisions and they put them in the same division, that's the whole thing, is they can't showcase them as much. That's the time to move it earlier on, because it is true. You do get a little bit of a bounce, that Tennessee's getting right now, a little bit more slack for losing early. And if you look at the kind of the model the SEC took, and I'll just talk from Florida's perspective, when they went to 14 teams and brought in Texas A&M and Missouri, is they split 2 divisions. In just football, it's mixed up a little bit in the other sports, but just football, they split the 2 divisions and they maintain their cross-division rivals. So a lot of the big schools had cross-division rivals. So, for instance, Florida always plays LSU. That's their cross-division rival. It's become a big rivalry. So they always play LSU, and then one team rotates. Alabama always plays Tennessee. So that would be a cross-division rival. One team rotates. Georgia always plays Auburn. So that's a cross-division rival. One team rotates. So they maintain those deep, old-rooted rivalries and found a way to still have the separate division, so those teams could meet again in the championship game. And then you have the Alabama LSU game early on. You have, Florida, Georgia is always in the middle of the year. So those teams kind of have a chance. That would have been the move 5 years ago. We'll see what happens when USC and UCLA come into town. But like you said, playoffs in there, keep it this weekend, keep it Thanksgiving, because once the playoffs start a couple weeks later with 12 teams, it's just not going to matter. They're good. They're good. They're not. They're not.
And
I agree.
And I do want to touch base on Daniel Warner asked another question about another schedule question about why Michigan and Ohio State always playing at noon. DJ, they always play at noon because that's the Big Ten thing. That's their rule. They're gonna flex Michigan and Ohio State at noon because they get first choice, and SEC they get a later slot, and Notre Dame, USC, they get a later slot. So the Big Ten wants to showcase Michigan and Ohio State early. first alone every year. And I
Yeah,
think Ian had
it's all TV contracts, right? Fox paid a lot of money for that TV slot, and their prime time, their main slot is that noon Eastern kickoff time. CBS has the SEC at 3:30 Eastern time. ABC is a night game. NBC is tied to Notre Dame's tied to NBC. They always play USC that game, so they kind of dictate where that game is going to be. But it bottoms down to I believe in the Big Ten now. Now they live out in Big Ten country. They don't really want night games in November. Weather purposes, just cold, snow, the weather just kind of deteriorates. So they have that early games, try to take care of their fans anyway. So that's why the Big Ten slots always early. So you see the big games early there. But the game schedules come out a week before. If you don't know this about college football, the game schedule usually get about a week and a half before. Sometimes the TVs will flex it to a week before if they have to choose between a couple games. And, in the SEC, again, I'll talk from the SEC perspective, CBS gets their first choice of the game. They do a couple they schedule out real early on, and CBS will take the best SEC game, put it at 3:30 Eastern time. ESPN will then decide what game they want at 6 o'clock and what game they want at 7 o'clock. And then they kind of fill in the rest with the networks. Big Ten, Fox will say, we want this game at this time. And then they have the nighttime reserved for the Pac-12 because of the West Coast. So it's all TV driven. That's
great
about
question,
it.
Nugget.
Yeah, great question. Daniel and DJ, thanks for emailing in on the questions on Ohio State, Michigan. Appreciate it. Let's go here to Tim Smith. Tim asks, who's your top college football target for Dynasty for the NFL next year? Basically asking, for those that don't understand the terminology, who do we like that's in college this year that will be rookies in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball? Who's going to make the biggest impact? Tudor, let's hear it.
Unlike most people that I play with, I shy away from rookie running backs. Some do pan out, but it just seems like there's so many injuries at that position, so many handcuffs, so many bust, or just bad team fits. That I just don't like. I don't like drafting that position, and I know a lot of people in my league draft those positions early. So I find a lot of value in receivers. So I always look at receivers. Jefferson, guys like Jefferson, Chase, Lamb, Waddle, those guys weren't drafted super high. You didn't have to get the number one pick to get those guys. A good receiver can still produce on a bad team. And in fact, a decent or an okay college receiver can do well on a bad team if they're the number one option. An example could be, it's been a few seasons, but look at Peoples Jones now. He didn't do anything in college. He was kind of an afterthought. Now he's a receiver now and a fantasy worthy receiver. So, Tim, I'm going to look at guys like Downs from North Carolina, Quentin Johnson, Boutte from LSU, if that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a sleeper running back later, maybe Abraham from Minnesota could be someone you get probably second, third round in your keeper league, maybe even further than that. But if you're struggling at the tight end position, Bowers isn't there next year. You're gonna have to wait on that one. But Mayer from Notre Dame could be a really good Mark Andrews like steal that could. Let's face it. You get a Mark Andrews, Trevor Kelsey type guy on your team, you're instantly improving your dynasty team. Late sleepers. This draft is deep. I don't know if you guys know this. This draft is super deep. Jarrett from Maryland, Burton from Alabama. Those are guys that are going to be late. Dell from Houston. So if you're in a dynasty league right now, I would potentially trade maybe some early picks and get some and stockpile some second, third rounders. There's a lot of value. There's a lot of value in those late rounds next year.
Yeah, and I'll just throw out, I totally agree from a dynasty perspective. You build from the wide receiver out, and the reason you do that is because wide receivers have longevity. If you look at the top, running backs might produce more, and especially they'll be second, third round picks, but Saquon Barkley's already missed a year. Jonathan Taylor now kind of has a busted year. As good as they are, there's still that risk of missing. But the longevity piece of some of these guys who go high is there. You see them produce a lot longer, a lot more consistently. So just wherever they land, that was a great point. No matter where they land, they still have a chance to go. And, it used to be a whole thing like receivers with good quarterbacks or big programs. But let's take a look. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson went to school together. They're both great receivers. Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith went to school together. They're pretty good. Mark Cooper came out of there. These programs have it. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, they went to school together. They're pretty good. There's a lot of good Ohio State guys coming up the pipeline. So best players are going to find their way in the field. So the top receivers, you mentioned Quentin Johnson from TCU, Butte from LSU. You said Dell from Houston. Who else did you say? Jackson Smith and Njigba. So this is interesting.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be a Heisman candidate, top 5 pick guy, but he's been basically hurt all year now. Has he been hurt, or has he been hurt and he doesn't want to mess up with anything? This is a guy who was a number 1 receiver last year with Garrett Wilson and with Chris Olave on the same team. Now, this is kind of a similar situation like Jamar Chase. Was he really the number 1 when Justin Jefferson was there? Well, yeah, he was, and he was that good. So this is kind of what Jackson is. He might be an afterthought. He might drop a little bit in the draft, but this guy is talented like crazy. So keep your eye out for him. Michael Mayer is a great point. They call him Baby Gronk when it came out and dominated from the second. Stepped on the field for Notre Dame from freshman year to this year. Just kind of an unstoppable force, run after the catch, used in a similar way. But if you're looking for a next year fix, if you're at the top of a dynasty league, don't look at quarterback. These quarterbacks are pocket passers. Stroud, Young. These guys are they're good. They're really good. They'll go in the top 10, but they're pocket guys. They're not dual threat guys. There's not Justin Fields that's coming out of there. But you do want to look at is that's Caleb Williams. He's coming down the road in a couple of years. But unless Anthony Richardson comes out, that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother deal. All right. The running backs tend to be pretty good when they come out. Kenneth Walker, we see this year, tend to be pretty good. Like the rookie running backs, Breece Hall was doing really well again.
Great.
Those guys will go in the second round, but they'll be at the top of your draft. Bijan Robinson is that guy this year. He's going to be the first running back selected. He's going to probably go 1.1 in all these. Bijan Robinson is going to be the guy that you want to look at. A guy like Dameon Pierce, who was kind of underutilized at Florida badly, but maybe has a little bit of fresher legs. That guy might be Jamar Gibbs from Alabama. Alabama has had these run of running backs that get drafted early. So he's only got 1 year of work on his legs. So I think you're going to get a little bit more out of Gibbs, and he'll probably be the second or third running back on. A name brand value guy that I like. This is kind of going back to I mentioned him. Blake Corum. I love Blake Corum. I talk to Curtis. I took the tutor all the time, every week about Blake Corum. What is DK, DraftKings Daily Fantasy, his props. I love Blake Corum. I think he's had a spectacular year. I think he's very worthy of Heisman discussion. He just doesn't fit the build of an NFL running back that we see. But I do think he could fit on a team because what we've seen is college production transfers to NFL production. Guys who are good in college and produce, they tend to find a way to produce in the NFL. And Corum's been a guy who's produced at a high level for multiple years. He's not going to get drafted high. He's not going to be a first or second round pick, but he does have name brand value and he is going to be a Heisman finalist. So just want to throw that. But Bijan Robinson is that guy who's going to be the 1.01 that you're looking for. I agree with Tudor though. Build from the outside in. Jackson Smith Njigba is my number 1 guy to look at if you're drafting 1.01 in Dynasty.
Not to toot my horn or anything, but I don't pick early in many dynasty leagues, so I don't know anything about picking those guys. So I'm always when I'm looking for dynasty steals, I'm looking second rounders, third rounders. So I don't get a chance to get those top guys. So that's why I mentioned the guys I do.
Very good. I'm going to throw my 2 cents in here. I'm going to talk about the quarterbacks for a second. One guy I do like and one I don't. The one guy that's getting a lot of hype that I just don't see it. There's something missing there for me. Quarterback at Kentucky, Will Levis. I know the hype is there. The measurables are there. on the field, I just don't see it. I don't get what the scouts are seeing there. Hopefully I'm wrong. I don't root against any of these kids. That one I just don't see. One I do see, he's older than most. Hendon Hooker, the Tennessee quarterback, down the road I think is going to be a solid quarterback, a solid starter in the NFL. Those are two guys, one I do like and one I don't. And to go to the running backs, Ian stole my thunder. I'm a huge Bijan Robinson fan. The runners can come in the NFL, start right away, because as far as understanding the play calls and stuff, it's just easy. It's which way you're running and they go. If you can pick up the blocking scheme and the blitz scheme, coaches will throw you in there early. I love Bijan Robinson. I think he's tough. He's physical. He's everything these guys look for in the NFL. Ian, I'm right with you on Bijan Robinson.
So what are your guys'
Right.
what are your guys' best case scenario for Robinson, and what are your guys' worst case scenario for Robinson?
It's so hard to say,
Who he
right?
goes to.
What was that?
Like who he gets drafted by? What would be best case? What would be worst case?
It's crazy to think, because Kenneth Walker gets drafted behind Rashad Penny, but Penny tears it up, and now all of a sudden Kenneth Walker's a shoe-in for Rookie of the Year, right? And not a shoe-in, but he's 50-50 with Dameon Pierce, and Jonathan Taylor lands in a tough spot with the Indianapolis, and CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is like in the greatest spot with
Chiefs.
with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's about to get cut by a fifth round running back, Isaiah Pacheco, behind him. So it's tough to say. I think for Robinson, what's going to be nice is he's going to get drafted at the back end. Reality is, people kind of know that they could churn out now. I don't think he's going to be necessarily a fit for a team like Miami or the Chargers if they move on from Eckler or something like that. But a power team like a Buffalo Bills maybe would be a good spot.
Baltimore,
they kind of turned him out. Dobbins he's been kind of hurt. This is I think, honestly, because it was kind of weird that Breece Hall went to the Jets when they had Michael Carter, but then he stepped in and he looked great. Honestly, I think wherever these guys land, regardless, you don't know what these rosters are going to look like this year. Wherever Bijan lands, he's probably going to be the most talented running back on the field. And he's probably going to get the carries. And for that,
great point.
25 touches. Even on the worst team in the NFL, Dameon Pierce is an every week producer at running back in fantasy. If you're good, you're going to play.
Absolutely. Remember,
I don't know, Tudor, what do you think about that?
I'm right with you.
I know you hate the rookie running backs. That's just kind of how I see them. The best players, you get 20 touches, you got to play them.
Yeah.
I think the Rams would be a really nice landing spot for him. Then they can be done with the Henderson Acres, BS, or even maybe Carolina gets their new C-Mac or something like that.
Yeah.
Good calls.
Carolina will definitely be in the mix for a runner.
Yeah, they replaced this Deontay Foreman who went to Texas, of course, and these guys just churn out. It's amazing. Christian McCaffrey goes over to San Francisco. Jeff Wilson goes over to Miami from San Francisco. These guys just
unbelievable.
It's all about opportunity, and the talent's going to get the opportunity.
Absolutely. Remember, please, guys and girls, follow us along all season long on Twitter, the Line Movers Network. Follow us at @the_LM Network. All season long on Twitter, all sports at @the_LM Network. Follow Ian Robbins. He does golf. He does college football. He does it all. And he's as good as they come. @Robbins, ROBINSIAN, @Robbins Ian. And follow our tutor @DK Sleepers. No one does more fantasy than the DK Sleeper. Moving on, great mailbag questions. We're going to go to Patrick Waters. Patrick, thanks for chiming in here. Ian, let's go to you first. Patrick wants to know, what's the worst gut punch loss you've had?
Especially in the last 2 weeks, I think I've had some moments. I've been, venting to you guys about that a little bit. Just last weekend, I lost 2 bets in the USC Colorado game. USC was up 31, minute left, punching a touchdown, cover the spread, and go over the total when I'm sitting on the under, and the other side when it's 3-2 in the second quarter. But that's something that's just going to happen. I think for people who remember the UCLA Stanford game a couple years ago,
I do.
where spread's done and all of a sudden out of nowhere, just kind of like one of those lateral plays going back, cuts the spread. We saw something very similar in the Washington-Philadelphia game on Monday night, where the total actually hit over on that backwards lateral that goes in. I've come to expect some of these, and the more props I bet now, the more like counting stats. It's like an assist or a shots on goal. It's like I'm depending on like intern stat writers to do it. And I kind of hate that, but this one's gonna, I'm gonna feel right here, because a lot of times a bad beat, and situationally coming in, flow of the game tells you to do this, and then last second out of nowhere, kind of something happens. But Patrick Mahomes, when he won the Super Bowl, one of his go-to props that I always had, this is a couple years ago now, was his rushing yards over, because the lines would book. You know exactly what I'm talking about, David, right? The lines would be set at 15, 20, and he'd hit it on one run. Like he wouldn't scramble enough, but he would scramble like one big run. He's so athletic, he'd get out there. Now in the Super Bowl, he hit his rushing prop maybe in the second quarter. And the end of the game, there was enough time left to kneel it out, but he needed to waste a little bit of time.
Yep.
So what Patrick Mahomes had to do was take 8 yards losses on 2 knees, lost 16 yards of kneels, went from 40 yards rushing, and lost his over 25-yard rushing prop because of 2 knees at the end of the game that he had clinched 15 yards past that. That one had me numb. And it wasn't a big loss. It wasn't anything like that. It's just one of those where it's like the perfect play, the perfect bet, and you're counting your money, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, what just happened?
That's why they call it gambling, right?
Right?
Tudor, you got one that's memorable, and it's always, we always remember the losers, right? The ones we win on the lucky ways, we don't remember as much. It's the losses that hurt so much.
Yeah, I don't gamble that much, like compared to Patrick or Ian. But I just want to say I remember that kneel down, and I think somebody lost $1 million on the Super Bowl showdown because of it, because he had Patrick Mahomes lost yards. So I mean, that's a gut punch. And I've had gut punches in my DK lineups, not gambling, but DK lineup. A few years ago, DraftKings golf million maker. I don't remember his name anymore now. Oh, Trey Mellanox, triple birdies in a row, and a guy from second place got the birdie bonus, and the 3 birdies from Trey fucking Mellanox, and that guy won it. That guy won $1 million, and I had to settle for $125,000. So that was my biggest. That was my biggest gut punch loss right there.
That'll hurt.
I will tell this. I know we remember the losses, but I told the story to both of you earlier this year. So I gotta say, sometimes you gotta celebrate the wins, because every time the loss hits you, you gotta remind yourself of this.
Yep.
I had a play. It was a future, the weekly prop. Tom Brady to have the most passing yards, and he was playing on a Sunday night on a Sunday. I think it was against the Chiefs, and they were playing. And I go to bed. He's behind. He needs like 20 yards. They didn't get it. Kansas City got a first down. I assumed that they just kneel it out. All of a sudden, I wake up in the morning, my account's full. I was like, so then I look and I'm reading, and apparently the Bucks got the ball back. Last play, they just did the lateral thing and ended up gaining 40 yards of it, and they counted a 40-yard pass, and it took Brady over whoever was in second place. And I was like, oh, that happened. I'm actually on the right side of one. So you got to remember that sometimes. It's like when you're betting horses and you always feel like the photo always goes against you. Sometimes they go for you.
Absolutely. Patrick Waters sent in a bunch of great questions. I want to get to one more he sent in. Tudor, this one's right up your alley. Some of these names that I see in the DraftKings contest are always near the top. One name he always sees is Chipotle Addict. And he wants to know, is he just risking more every week? Is it one guy? Is he with a bunch of guys that are on a team together, putting in multiple entries? Obviously, Patrick's not saying, do you know him personally and what's the strategy? But from where you sit, Tudor, and you play in so many of these games that you know the ebbs and flows of this. Are these guys alone? Are they teams? And is it just his thinking that he's always at the top, or is he better than most?
That's Tom Crowley. Tom Crowley, the former poker player. He's rich.
He's a Chicago guy.
He was rich before he won the Millie Maker, so he was even richer. And so I don't. Okay, he wasn't good before, but now that he's a millionaire, and he probably has access to, he has time and access to access all these different sites, Run Pure, Rotor Grinders, Fantasy Lab. He has time to research all the plays where he can leverage off his plays so that he's winning a contest somewhere. So when he's playing all these contests, and he plays them all and he maxes them all, he's taking losses somewhere, but somewhere he's leveraging and he's taking win. So I think he's still playing with house money, and maybe once or twice out of the 16, 17 week season in the NFL, he wins big. He might win another $1 million, but he's also losing another week. I would say he's good now because he has the time, he researches, he knows the game, he knows what to play. But that came because of money. And I think Ian and I, if we came into $1 million, we put our heads together, I think we could max all these things with our knowledge and win too, and look like we're experts. So props to him. He won $1 million. He won $1 million. He was a good poker player. He that's just what guys like Ian and I need. We just need that bankroll, and then we can start joining all these double ups and cash games to make some money to enter some of these bigger things like the Millie Maker, or some of the bigger things, the qualifiers, to win even more money. So he might be losing in the tough stuff, but he's winning money in the cash and the double up because he knows enough what to do there to get his money back. And that's when you have a lot of money, you can do that stuff.
Great explanation.
That's the big thing. It's the bankroll. I mean, when you're not afraid to lose money, you have it. And when you have the bankroll to max out, like you said, max out, that's the key thing. If you can max out these contests, so not even just the Millie Makers, put 150 lineups in, and that means you're spending $3, $4, $5 grand, depending on the tournament each week. But even the bigger contest ones, the ones that are like the snowman, the 888s, those are multi-enter. Those are, you could enter in 40, 50 lineups. Well, you need to max that to max your leverage, because these guys who are the pros, Chipotle, Crowley, his brother, Awesome. All these guys are maxing out all these because they have the bankroll to do it. They've built it up. They're not winning every week, but they win enough to cover it. So if you're not maxing it, you're not matching them, you're at a big disadvantage because they can leverage all those plays, and they're not afraid to lose everything in the contest because it's like making a bet. You can't be afraid to lose a bet when you make the bet. And if you're betting so much that you're afraid to lose it, you shouldn't be betting that much in the first place. So if you're entering a contest that you're afraid to lose, they're not doing that. So that's the whole mindset. And when you can leverage a play, and this is what I would say for the DK people, do a 25-cent 20 max and max it out if you never maxed out before, and mess around with a bunch of lineups. I got a good friend of mine who started doing this with like dollar showdowns, 20 max entries, and he's like doing an MLB, for instance. He's like, I'm just going to captain the catchers and low zone guys because I'm not afraid to lose it. But what's happening is you just find out that you'll win a lot more when you're not afraid to lose, and then you're not afraid to go the other way with a lot of things. Like you're not afraid to leave salary on the table, or if you're playing a showdown, maybe you leave maybe you leave Patrick Mahomes off your roster for whatever reason because you're not afraid. And if you've never maxed entered before, try it out at the lowest level. They have 10 cents, 25 cents, $1, 20 maxes, and just max enter that with different lineup leverages and see what an advantage you have and how much more often you will cash in that.
Patrick Waters, thanks for all the great questions. Great questions. Those,
guys,
really insightful. Moving to Risa.
Hold on, David. I think we're running low. let's pause this. We have so many more great questions. We're having fun with this. It's Tudor's birthday. Let's pause it. Let's start up a part 2 a little bit and hit some more of these. What do you say?
Part 2 coming right back at you.